Good Saturday morning to everybody, and welcome to Mortgage Matters Radio Show with Rob Weinberg. I'm Gary Byron. Rob, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. You're looking good.
Thank you.
I see the nice weather is paying off here, huh?
It is.
Yeah, everybody was waiting for it. You know.
I hope it stays like this for a bit.
I'm right there with you. How was your week?
It was great, and
Good.
You know, the market just seems to be continuing to escalate, and we're seeing a lot more offers getting accepted lately, especially from first-time buyers. I think with the nicer weather, there's starting to be some people putting their houses on the market now.
Yes, I have. It's so funny that you say that, because what I was going to bring up to you was that I noticed just this weekend, there's like a lot of open houses going on. I don't know if people are just moving out of the state or whatever, but they're moving. But the weather does have a lot to do. You don't see many open houses in February, let's say.
Not as many, because people don't like to trek in ice and snow to do that. So the nicer the weather gets, the more open houses. And like I said, the more activity. I think somewhat the pandemic may play in, because people don't want others trekking through their house with not knowing the health situation and whatnot.
Well, that's true too. You're right. We have to, but so it's a combination of the
Definitely,
COVID
and I'm
being
hopeful
lifted.
that over the next couple of months, as we get into the summer and the fall, we're going to see people that were on the fence about listing their homes and start to actually put those homes on the market. But it's a double-edged sword, because they sell their house at a great high market value, but now they have to buy their next one as well. So some of them are moving out of state, moving to lower cost areas, because they are going to have to get into the current market as a buyer if they're selling at this time.
So let's go into that. Let's talk about using your equity then to invest in real estate, since we're talking about real estate. What's the first step? What's the first step to building a real estate portfolio?
So a lot of people come to me wanting to be real estate entrepreneurs. They want to be a real estate millionaire. They've heard about the success stories, because I believe 90% of millionaires in the United States, it's a result of real estate. So with that said, where do you start? You start by buying a primary home. You don't just want to go out and buy an apartment building or buy an investment property immediately. That's getting in a little too quick, too deep. What you want to do is you want to buy a primary home. That could be a single-family home or a multifamily, a 2 to 4 unit property, where you're going to live in one unit and rent the others out, as we've talked about on previous shows. If I could do it all over again, that's where I would start. I'd buy a 2, 3, 4 unit home, live in one, not forever, just for a couple of years as you're starting out, and rent out the others, because ultimately that can be turned into your first rental property, your first cash cow that can start building equity and paying the mortgage. So step number one is buying that first primary home. The second step to that is paying that mortgage down and building equity over time. Every single payment you make to the mortgage company, there's going to be a piece of that that's going to principal and a piece that's going to interest. The interest part doesn't matter. That's not yours. That's the bank's. But the principal part, at first it's very small.
Yeah, it is.
May only be a couple dollars a month. But as you move through that amortization schedule in the mortgage, once you have that mortgage a couple of years, and some examples we'll talk about, you start building equity quick. You might be paying $1,000 a month on your mortgage, and $600 of that is going to principal. That's like a savings account in the walls of your home. So the other piece of it is that the home value is going to fluctuate, and in most cases, the home value is going to go up over time. When they look at the last century of real estate prices, they have historically gone up quite a bit over time. So as that mortgage is going down and that value is going up, the gap between those two, the mortgage balance and the actual value of the home, that's your equity. That's what we're going to talk about using to create wealth.
So how much equity then does somebody need in order to implement these types of methods?
So you can't borrow all the money in your home. Side note, if you're a veteran, there are specific programs that let you borrow more than the options we're going to talk about.
Okay.
90, even in some cases, 100% of the value.
Oh.
Other than if you're a veteran and qualify for a VA loan, you're going to be capped at, depending on the type of property, 70 to 80% of the value of the home. So if you do the math, you're going to need to have anywhere from 20 to 30% equity in your property in order to implement these type of methods. So that's really the minimum, okay? And these loans are always changing. The guidelines are changing. I remember when I started on an FHA loan, you could borrow 95% of the value on a cash out refinance. Then they lowered it to 90%. Then they lowered it to 85%. And where we stand today, it's just about not even a year and a half ago that FHA made a change where now they only allow you to borrow 80% of the home value. Conventional loans are the same. So just to reiterate, you need 20 to 30% equity to do that. It's not going to happen overnight. It really is not. It's going to take a combination of the value of the home going up and you paying down that mortgage. Unless you put a really big down payment at closing, some people do, but most first-time buyers are putting lower down payments. 3 to 5%, maybe 10%. So it is going to take several years, in most cases, to build that amount where you can refinance or put a mortgage and take that equity out.
But buy your primary house is what you're saying here. Buy the home you're going to live in first
You got to
and build
pay.
equity.
You got to live somewhere. You have to have a roof over your head. You're either paying your own mortgage or you're paying your landlord's mortgage.
Oh.
Where would you rather build equity for
your own,
yourself
of course,
or your own? And in a lot of areas of the country, and even in Connecticut here, depending on the town, you can rent a house for the same or less than, the same or more than it would cost for buying. So it just makes sense to buy because you might actually be able to save money on a monthly basis.
So then, but how long does someone need to live in their home then before using their equity? And what impact does the length of time that they have been in their home have?
There are a few exceptions, but 99% of people are going to need to live in that house for between 6 and 12 months. That's going to be the minimum. And the reason is because depending on the loan program, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac conforming or conventional loans will go off the current value once you've lived there for 6 months or once you've owned the house for 6 months. So if you bought a house for $200 and you got a good deal and it's worth $275, after 6 months, we can get the house reappraised and go off that current value. On an FHA or government loan, it's a 1-year waiting period. So you have to live there for 12 months or a year. You have to have owned the property in order to actually cash out equity from it and use the current value, I should say.
All right, you had said something a minute ago that you were saying you buy your home that you're going to live in first, build some equity, and then if you want to buy a multifamily home, go for it. What if you decided, though, to buy the multifamily home first, but live there for a couple of years? Even though it's a multifamily home, that's recommended as well, though. I
would say that's the best idea.
Yeah.
You know, a multifamily is a great strategy to start with because especially if you are starting out and you don't have a big family and you don't need a big single family home, you know, a 2 to 4 unit property is great. You can get a 2 or 3 bedroom in each unit and live in one and rent the others out, and those tenants are helping to pay your mortgage. Then once you're ready to settle down, have, you know, more kids and really start a growing family, then you can move to that single family property and you can then rent out the unit that you were occupying. And all these strategies we're talking about as far as using the equity in your home, they can be implemented on any type of property. I will make a side note and say that a 2 to 4 unit home is more restrictive than a single family when it comes to pulling equity out, but there are some different program options that are available for that. And you can still, in most cases, pull out, like we said, 70 or even 75% of the value of the home. So people that have bought homes in the last year in Connecticut, a lot of them are implementing this stuff right now because the home values have skyrocketed almost in every city, in some double digits percentage-wise over the last 12 months. So if your house was worth $200,000 a year ago, it might be worth $250,000, $275,000 plus. Now there's equity in there you may have not even realized you had. Equity that you can use for a lot of different things, like we've discussed on previous shows, debt consolidation, home improvements. But for the purpose of right now, we really want to concentrate on using that equity to build wealth, taking that equity out and putting it somewhere that you can invest it in another property or in some sort of other investment that will allow you to actually get a return on that money.